Hello.
Hey, how's everyone going? How are you all doing today? So we figured we would do a little short Q&A, give you guys a status update on where the series is at, how things are going. If I sound a little different than normal, some of you know, some of you don't know, I have had an oral surgery, so I have basically half my left palate is kind of missing right now, and so it's a big kind of wound up there as they try to seal up a breach between the sinus cavities and the mouth. Terrible dental stuff, okay? It's just brutal. So trying to push through all that and get this book written and keep moving along.
Yeah. Let's see what we got.
So we will try and take whatever questions you guys have that you wanted to ask about the series and just kind of give you a little bit of an update on that. So the book is moving along. Despite everything that's been going on, been down for 2 surgeries, we are pressing on. I think we're getting there. It's not completely done yet, but I'd say we're about 3/4 of the way through it at this point. Should have the remainder chapters and scenes done next 10 days. It'll go into editing by the end of the month. And then while we are in Taiwan, our editor will be working on it. We'll get the first round back probably while we're in Taiwan. We'll finalize some of those things, get it back to her. We are striving to get this book out actually on September 30th, the last day of September instead of October 30th.
We're trying, but we can't guarantee anything.
Yeah, that was actually always the internal goal, was to try and do that. The surgeries kind of put a little bit of a crimp in that process, so we're trying to overcome that and get that going. I think we can still make that happen though. It will be pretty neat if we can. Gives you guys, let you see what's happening with it sooner instead of making you wait a little longer. So it's a killer book, though. Killer ending. The ending's gonna blow you away because there were a couple of different like traditional ways we could have ended this that a lot of people kind of they see it coming. They told us does it end this way, does it end that way, and those are all very plausible ways to do it, but kind of wanted to have an ending where you guys are just like, what? Just did not see that coming. And I think it's going to be a very unique, good way to end this thing. So hopefully you guys enjoy that. A lot of intense action in this one. We have a fair bit more air scenes in this one, a lot less of the naval side, but a lot more on the air side. And then a fair bit of tanker action, heavy infantry stuff, trench warfare fighting stuff. So there's some really good special forces sequences and stuff. A couple good shootouts in Paris, of all places. So I think you guys are going to enjoy some of that too. But pretty excited about that. So I'm going to change over real quick to Facebook because I allowed other people to ask questions. Post questions if they had any for us to go here. So right now we do not have any extra ones there. And again, I kind of posted this like last minute yesterday.
So maybe we should just talk a minute about what's coming up after Monroe Doctrine and how we're going to be going to Taiwan to do some research. It's actually really cool because we're going to be even traveling with some of our super fans. We have
we have
3 super fans and a spouse.
One of them is bringing his wife with. Yeah. So Dave Davenport's been in our reader group, one of our longtime beta readers. Not everyone knows him. So Dave, he just retired from the Marine Corps last year after 30-some years. He's retired as an 06 and taught at the Naval Academy for a little while, and just really super smart and really helpful in crafting some of the specific Marine naval invasion scenes we had in Taiwan and MD6. So when we go to Taiwan, because that is going to be the next series we're going to do, we want to actually go visit the likely seaborne, heliborne, and airborne invasion locations and where they're possibly going to happen. We're going to take some videos, some photos. We'll be able to share that with you guys, but we want to see it for ourselves. And then another cool thing is we're going to be interviewing a bunch of people while we're there too. So we just got connected with a couple of journalists and reporters who actually cover the Taiwan military and things happening in China and U.S. relations and what's going on. And so that's going to help us with understanding the perspective and what it is the local people are facing and dealing with on a daily basis, and understanding the local politics, how that plays into it. Because, as an American, we have our own internal bias and perceptions of how this should happen, how it should play out. We think it'll be X, Y, Z. But that's not always the ground truth and how it will actually happen, because unless we really understand the local culture and the people and the political politics and the military, the local military, all those dynamics, how that works, you really can't come up with a good vision of how to play out. Nor can you create really good, compelling characters, because you're trying to create like a Chinese or Taiwanese character from an American perspective. That's really hard to do well. I like to think we try. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't, but it's challenging to say the least. So going to Taiwan is going to help us a lot, I think, be able to do some of that. So what are some of the things you're looking forward to on this trip?
Obviously it's going to help us write more realistic scenes and be able to see things visually. You can, hear, smell, like, what is it like smell like in a place, or what is it like look like? What does it feel like to be there? What's like the noise level in certain locations? And, what's the background noise you're going to hear in different scenes? It gives you make everything a lot more realistic. And I have never traveled to Taiwan at all, so it's going to be all a first for me. I updated my camera this year, so I'm very excited to take a lot of pictures. Get ready for a slew of Taiwan pictures coming up here in September.
Yeah.
Whether you like them or not, they are coming.
Yeah. So that's going to be kind of neat to do. And all of my military and government experience has been in the Middle East, Europe, and Eurasia. And so we went on a almost a 2-week vacation to Taiwan, or to Thailand, back in, I think it was 2012. And that's the only experience we have going into Asia. And so 50 odd countries around the world, but just not Asia, ironically, Africa and other places. But this will be kind of cool to go there, physically see it ourselves. The culture is so dynamically different.
It's very different.
It's very different.
And I did some research on the culture going into this, and it was kind of interesting. We're going to be going there during what's called Ghost Month. So apparently there's a lot of like superstitions surrounding this time of year, where they feel like that there's like a kind of a thinner veil between the spiritual world and the physical world during that time. So a lot of people won't go out at night alone, or they won't take pictures at night. There's just like different things that are going on during that time of the year, and it'll be brand new.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be kind of neat to see how that works, And so in the past, we've always done our series kind of big scope, right? You have this. I always tell about like the 3 different levels that we write at, where we have the strategic, the presidential, the military, like command structure level, and then we have the second level, which is typically like your division to brigade or battalion commander level, where now they're getting the mission from on high. Now they're going, crap, well, how do we execute and do this? They start figuring that piece out. And then you have the grunt level, the sergeants, the platoon leaders, and the soldiers who actually have to go execute the mission. And it's just a continuous cycle between those three levels. That's how we write all of our books. It's written like that.
This is going to be different.
This one will be different. So this time, instead of having this massive cast of characters, and I understand from the reader's perspective, it's a lot of people to keep track of. Try writing it. It's very challenging too. If you don't have a good series Bible, oh my God, trying to keep track of characters and who's with what unit, it gets challenging. So this next time around, we're going to do things slightly different. It's actually be trimmed down a lot. There'll probably be around 5, I think, 5, maybe 6 at most characters that we're going to follow.
I think you said there was going to be 5 American and 5 Taiwanese.
Yep. So we have 5 characters, but then we have 5 Taiwanese characters that are paired with them. because most of the time you do what's called left seat, right seat. You introduce some kind of new training or equipment. You have your, the American expert or contracting expert, and then you have the partner nation person that's getting trained on it. And so we're doing the same kind of thing. So right now in the real world, the U.S. is in the process of transferring a lot of equipment, either drawdown equipment or new equipment, to Taiwan to implement what's called the porcupine strategy. Um, Unlike Ukraine, we didn't get that; they didn't do that in time. Apparently, this time what they're doing is they're flooding the gates, flooding it with equipment, and basically turning Taiwan into a gigantic prickly porcupine. And the concept or belief is that this will deter China from wanting to take a bite because they'll get a mouthful of quills. But that requires time, requires a lot of training, a lot of mentoring to kind of get that going. Right now, ironically, so there is a squadron of Taiwanese F-16 pilots, because they actually do have older model F-16s. So they know how to fly them already, and they have a whole maintenance LSF's already built in there. But they have a squadron that's currently at Luke Air Force Base in Arizona. It's undergoing training, advanced training on the Block 70, which is the Viper model of the F-16s. That's the newest state-of-the-art version, because Taiwan has purchased just under 100 of them. And so they're going through that training right now, and then they'll start cycling people through as they swap out the aircraft. We're going to look at from having an American F-16 pilot paired with a Taiwanese F-16 pilot, and how they go through that training, and then go forward to Taiwan to finish off the stuff, and they just kind of get stuck when the action happens. Another character we're going to be looking at is how the National Guard actually plays a very big, vital role in this very specific kind of training, believe it or not. Like in the case of Florida, the Florida Army National Guard, case in point, they have a unit from St. Petersburg that was actually in Ukraine training them on the Avenger air defense systems and manpads, things like that, literally days before the invasion. And they got pulled out right as the invasion kicked off. And so that was kind of neat how that works. So we're going to roll that in too. We're actually going to have a guard unit where you've got different batteries from different units to form a battalion, a training battalion that will go over to help train them on the HIMARS and the Paladins and the towed artillery pieces and things like that. So it's going to be a unique approach. It's going to be a lot more fun because we can get a little more in depth on the characters and the stories and the backstories and plots with that. So I think you guys are going to enjoy that a lot more. But it'll be slightly different than what we've done in the past. So I'm excited to get rolling in that series. That will probably launch in September of next year, I think.
What we're going to try to do this time around, if we can work it out, is we're going to try and get a deal and do audiobooks simultaneously released with the books, which is something we've never done before. But, that would be like a brand new thing. People have asked for that, but you basically have to sit on the book for like 3 months, 6 months, which is something in the past we didn't have enough readers to actually be able to accomplish that. So, this is going to be something that we're going to finally be able to do. Yeah,
that's hard to do as a self-published writer. When we finish these books, we want to get them published, fairly quick, because this is how we earn our pay, our money. So we don't want to have a finished product and not bring it to market for 3 months or 6 months. So we finally, I think, are getting in a position where we can make that work. So when MD8 comes out, the goal at that point then is we're going to laser focus and actually work on trying to finish off the last 2 books of the sci-fi series so we can close that one out. I apologize for everyone who's unfortunately had to wait on that a little longer than they had hoped for. But I want to finish that series off, and there's quite a bit to still wrap up with that. And I'm excited to start work on that and get that done. So we start work on that in late October-ish, probably, to start work on that. And then the goal is to then just, finish book 9 and finish it, and then roll right into 10 and be able to really knock that out and really tie it up and do that series justice. I anticipate having both of those books done. The first is going to go live in February. We will hopefully be able to knock out the 10th one and have it released, a couple months later, hopefully. And then we start work on the Taiwan
We're going to have a
series.
little bit of a different writing process with the Taiwan series as well, because normally we tend to be a little bit more what we call in the writing biz pantsers. We do.
I don't like outlines. I just like a free flow.
We do a little bit more free flow. Kind of work it out. We'll figure it out. Like we didn't necessarily know exactly where the story was going to end. We had an idea, but once you start writing it, then you go, no, it's not really exactly what I want to do with it. And then you keep changing it until you finally get it. Yeah. But we're going to spend a little bit more time doing heavy outlining and things like that with this particular series. And I think might be actually a good thing for us.
Yeah, and what's really going to be nice is, again, good idea, Fairy Strikes, right? And you're like, oh, well, we just got done with the Fallen Empire series, really intense. I just want a break, so I'll do some sci-fi stuff. And then lo and behold, that actually takes off and does really well. And I actually enjoy reading sci-fi. I just never wrote it. And, found out that actually our style, we just write like thrillers in space and just move the timeline and go figure everyone likes that. Because it's so different. It's just uniquely different. So it's taken off and done well. But then it was like, oh, great, because we had this Monroe Doctrine series that's coming out. So now we got stuck for like almost 3 years. We had to write one book in one series, one book in the other series. And you have no idea how hard it is mentally to change from a sci-fi series to a thriller series, back and forth with all the technical research.
And with all the characters.
All the characters. Oh, my God.
So many characters.
Just brutal. Like brutal. So it's been like 3 years of purgatory trying to get through both of them and make them really good. It's been hard. I'm not going to lie. And so what's nice is as we kind of wrap these two up, we're going to be able to just focus and getting one series and genre done at a time, which means like the Taiwan series, when that starts to release, these are not going to be like 6 months, 1 year releases, pre-orders. These things should be able to roll out fairly quick. And it'll be the same thing when we do a sci-fi series. It will roll out very quick. And I think doing this new way of writing, this pattern that we're going to start setting up and doing, is going to work so much better for you guys as readers and for us writing it. Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we still have to like it, like
we have to like the show.
it pays our mortgage. I'm not going to lie, it pays our mortgage, and we have kids, so we have to make money at it, or we won't keep doing it. Yeah. But we have to like it too.
You gotta enjoy what you're doing. If you don't enjoy your job and like what you're doing, what's the point? You're just gonna hate it, and that shows in the writing. Believe me, when you don't like it, it shows in the writing. There's no energy, there's no life to it, and the readers pick up on that really quick. So we enjoy what we're doing. We like it a lot, and we got some great stories and ideas. And honestly, I like the sci-fi series, man. I like that series. I've had a lot of fun with that. I had crazy visions of having that series go for like 16 or 20 books. But I was talking with Jay Allen, and he's sharing some insights with me on his Blood on the Star series, which I was a huge fan of. And he was sharing with me how that was really tough when I think he hit like book 18 or 20. Really tough to keep it going that long in the storyline. And then trying to close it out. And the readers loved it, so he just kept writing more, but he didn't really want to keep doing that, though. And so I decided with the sci-fi, instead of doing, pushing it out, which that thing could go for a long time, an easier way to do this, a more enjoyable way to do this, is to actually we're going to have it go out to 10. Then we're going to work on some of the side series, the spinoff series that'll dangle from the main. Mm-hmm. And then at some point, I will write the next evolution of the sci-fi series. So the next tranche of, say, 10 other main books will then pick up the storyline where it left off just a certain number of years in the future. And that's how we keep this thing alive for a long time, new, fresh, and all kinds of ways to keep it rolling. So we got a few other questions here. So let's see.
So we got a message from Cicero. Is your new series modern, or set in modern time, or future? I just asked.
All right, so yeah, the Taiwan one is going to be kind of a quasi-future, modern. Timelines are like an author's nightmare. they're just brutal, because as soon as you put a timeline, you're invariably going to screw it up, or things are going to transpire too fast or too slow, and it's not going to work. But because you wrote it, you're stuck with it. So in the case of Taiwan, for this next series, we're kind of implying its future. I'm just not sure I want to peg down a date. Personally, I have a really, really good idea of when I think a legit invasion or conflict is going to start. I think there are probably two very distinct windows of things to happen, but I don't want to write that in, because I don't want to date it, because that's another problem too. Is with timelines, you can have dating the things, because then it's like, well, 4 years later it didn't happen, whatever, things like that. So I don't want to do that. But in wars, okay, one of the ways you can predict wars, or have a really good understanding of when there is a likely thing going to happen, there are a series of precursor actions that a nation will take in preparations for a war. So when
and wasn't there a specific book you were referencing for that?
There's several of them about that kind of stuff, but here's an example of that. Okay, so in preparation for the Gulf War, or second Gulf War, when we invaded Iraq in 2003, we more or less spent 10 months shipping divisions and equipment to Kuwait and getting things right. It took us a long time to just get everything over there, set up, ready. Units, everything was on par. Same thing with Desert Storm. It took them a year. That convoy to move all of that equipment there, we talked about that in the Crisis in the Desert series, with Matt Jackson. There was literally a supply transport in real life. One was, they were a mile apart from Saudi Arabia all the way to the eastern seaboard of the United States for 6 or 7 months. That was how many ships there were, and constantly moving to get everything over there. Fuel, munitions. My God, you'd not believe how much you go through with that. And it just takes time to move it. So there's precursors. In the case of Ukraine, when Russia was going to invade, there were a lot of things happening beforehand that tipped off they were going to do this. And so while they continue to say it's a training thing, everyone else is saying it's a training thing. You heard how the CIA was disclosing, saying it could happen here. It could happen here. And some of those precursor are things that you look for. If you know what to look for, you can stop these things and all kinds of conflicts. Some of the big ones I'll give you is blood banks. Okay, when you see a nation move most of the national blood banks to a border area or a particular spot that's been kind of conflicty, that's a really good precursor that they're going to anticipate some sort of military action. Mm-hmm. When you see them move large numbers of hospital gear and equipment and start setting up hospitals or upgrading certain features at hospitals, suddenly this hospital in this rural area is getting a bunch of new wards to it. Temporary stuff starts springing up. And then, wow, they've got 6 or 7 brand new helipads. They're putting that stuff there for a reason. They're not just doing it for, giggles. Those precursor actions. So when you see those things happening in Russia, that, they had moved the national blood banks to near the borders with Ukraine. They had moved all of their hospital units near the borders of Ukraine. They had begun transporting large quantities of munitions from these big supply depots to the border regions. The intel people who watched this crap looked at that and said, whoa, they're going to invade. And we can probably guess when. So if you look at China, I'm going to give you a little heads up, you can look at China. They do a good job of suppressing this stuff, but not everything gets suppressed. You can see a lot of those precursors have already started. And so that's why I say there are very set windows. I personally think it will happen, and that's why I also believe it will happen.
There is a reason we're going to travel
now and not in a handful of months.
Yeah.
substantially more concerned about not getting the book published before it kicks off than I am anything else, to be honest with you. Because there's a couple of windows, and we'll be approaching one of them next year. There will be another one, probably another 9 to 12 months after the first one, and so it's kind of a challenge.
Sister Rose says, I have been reading all of your series since the World War III series, which is my favorite.
I know that was a fun
God
one.
bless you. We had fun with that. That was the very first series, though. So, you do get better at writing, like the actual act of writing itself as you go along.
Yeah, the Henry Stein character. I really liked that character and doing that. That was hands down a lot of fun. We were living at the time in Virginia at that time. We were in Alexandria.
Well, we also moved in the middle of it.
Yeah, we did. But when I was writing the first one, we lived there, and it was kind of coincidence at the time because we went to an Anglican church when we were up there, and go figure, our church had like some big politicals that actually went there. Kind of funny, we had Steve Barnes from he went to that church. Chris Steyerwolf from Fox News at the time went there, and he was in our men's group. And so I used to see Chris a couple times a week and be able to talk with him a lot and kind of help shape some of the different characters and dynamics, and just helped me with crafting just some of the political aspects of things, and that was cool to be able to pick his brain about that because he knew a lot of that stuff. I didn't at the time. So it was an interesting series, cool series. I liked it. We joke about it, like some of the author things they talk about, like what are you going to do, like estate plan, things like that. Ideally, believe it or not, what you do is you're really smart about this. You have a series that you write and you put it in the drawer and you don't publish it. And this way, should you die from some kind of freak accident or whatever, your spouse has a fully completed series that they can then publish after your death, to at least allow the family to continue earning money and keeping things going and moving for a few more years, after you're gone, because you're not writing any more books. So that's the series I would probably actually completely rewrite and do it justice and do it well. Probably would be expanded out and actually would redo that one probably. Yeah.
Well, we're glad you liked that series, and we're glad you've been reading us since the beginning. That's very exciting. We're really glad to have you on here.
Yeah, if there's a particular series or book you enjoy the most or like, be sure to let us know. Ask questions if you have questions about that, or why did you look at this, or what was your thought with that, things like that. Feel free to post them in the comments. We'll circle back to try and answer them all. One of the big things I think we really pride ourselves on is seeking out ideas and questions from the readers, because at the end of the day, you guys are the ones reading the book. If we are messing something up, or doing something good, or we're doing something bad, or we have things we can improve, we want to know those things, because we can't make it better if we don't know those things.
So I have a question for everyone that's actually on here. Is there anything that you would definitely like to see in the end of the Monroe Doctrine series? This is your chance to possibly, maybe, sort of, kind of influence the ending a little bit.
Or a character that you might want to see more of, or like know what happened after the war, things like that. We are looking to try to make a little bit more of an emphasis on post-war prologue of the characters. A lot of people have questions about that from the last couple of book series that we did. They wanted to know what happened with different characters, and rightly so. I think it's a good idea. So we're going to take that suggestion and run with that. So there could be as many as it could be as much as 10-15% of the book actually is just like a prologue of all the characters, of what happened, what they did afterwards. Just kind of let people have that closure, so to speak. But yeah, we're open to ideas and suggestions. So if you've got them, definitely feel free to ask.
Can you check one more time on the list?
Yeah. Check. Oh, is this the right time? Maybe.
Yep.
So, I want to make sure we answer everything. We're not good. We don't do these as often as we probably
No,
should.
so that's the thing. I'm gonna start trying to do a few more lives and just doing a little bit more updates, and then I think I'm gonna try to do a few more do a couple other segments, maybe like a once a month book club of just like a book that I think that our audience might like. That's not ours, actually. Just I happen to think that it sort of relates to our audience and things that you guys might be interested in.
Oh, tell them about that book that you read on the battery stuff. The
Prepared?
EV battery. No, the EV batteries.
Cobalt Red was just
that was an amazing book.
I still haven't finished it. It's so heavy. It's just really heavy. It's hard to read, and it's like we're all kind of complicit in this horrible thing that's happening, and I'm not even really sure what to do with the information at this point because it doesn't feel like there's really much I could do to stop it. But it's really deep, and it's just kind of it's a sad and really kind of hard topic to deal with.
Yeah, the whole EV thing's it's fascinating. It's interesting. I signed up. I signed up on the list for the Tesla Cybertruck when it very first came out. So like within a few days, I signed up. I'm number 250-some thousand. So God knows if I'm going to actually get it within the first 12 months. I don't know. We'll see. I would love to get it. Let's see how finances work towards the end and what it actually ends up coming out to be price wise. But I was looking at doing like the tri-motor version. But the whole Peter Zion's another interesting character you can listen to on YouTube. Talks a lot about this, especially the EV stuff. Makes some sense on there. Like if you're gonna have an EV car, if you live above like I-40, definitely anything above I-40, like you should not be allowed to have solar panels or a solar or a EV car. And the reason is you will never be able to make it efficient to the point where you're actually using less fossil fuels and impact on the environment by owning one if you live above I-40 than if you live below I-40. And then he makes the case for like, if you're below I-40 and especially below I-10, you should never have a gas car. You should have an EV car, and the solar panels should be all you use because it's just efficiencies is what it comes down to. Where it is, where it's efficient, where it's not, and things like that. It's really quite neat and fascinating. We get in the weeds, but I'm kind of a nerd in that respect. I just like details like that.
So we got another comment here from Cicero. Well, I'm on book 7, which is the Monroe Doctrine. I love the president and some of her decisions, but is Cicada going to be the good AI? I wonder.
That is a good question, and that is probably a chapter I need to circle back on and put in some more information in there because we have not put in a lot of stuff about security. We talk about it in the background sometimes or different things, but we haven't actually gone in and do some more on that.
Yeah.
But that's a good idea. That's a good point. So thank you for bringing that up. I'm so busy with a bunch of other angles. So that's when you can write and handle and take on while I try to get everything else done.
Give me some prompts and I will make it happen.
Oh, it's tough because I'm missing like half my, like the left half of my palate is like almost gone.
I will not let him show you what it looks like inside his mouth, y'all. It's really gross.
It hurts like a mofo. Oh, fudge, it hurts. And so it's difficult to actually talk, and I can be kind of a chatterbox. But yeah, it just.
All right, another comment from Cicero says
mouth surgery in like 3 months.
Says hashtag don't mess with Texas.
Oh,
that's
love
right.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah. Texas is awesome.
I gotta tell you guys. So I went to college in Oklahoma. All right, I know there's like a whole Oklahoma, Texas thing, whatever. I went to a lot of like spring breaks in Texas and things like that. I love Texas. I'm not from Texas. I have Texas pride. I don't know why. I love Texas. It's great. It's a great state.
Yeah, but we came back to Florida. You know? So I got stationed here in 2004. So originally I started on the Army side. God, it took me 2 freaking years to transfer from the Army to the Air Force. But I had no idea where I was going until I showed up to MEPS and, enlisted because I came over. I was an NCO on the Army side, and I came over into the Air Force prior service as an NCO. That's really, really rare. Like that's like probably less than 10 people per year will actually do that. So I was able to be one of the guys to come over and do that. But I had no idea where I was going, what I was going to be doing, nothing. And so, Miranda got this job teaching Spanish, high school Spanish in
Polk County.
Polk County in Lakeland, Florida. No, Auburndale, Florida. It's Auburndale. It's near Lakeland. And so I had no idea where I was going. We were still dating. And then I get some maps and they're like, all right, well, here, keep my rank. I got some crap job at first, which I immediately moved into a special duty assignments as soon as I could possibly do that. That's a benefit of being fire service. You actually know how to work some of these things and get out of the jobs you don't really want to do and do something cool. But I had no idea where I was going. And they said, oh, you're going to MacDill Air Force Base. I was like, where the hell is MacDill? Because I know where all the Army bases are. Like Tampa, Florida. I was like, what? They don't have it. You got an Air Force base in Tampa, Florida? And like the recruiters kind of envious. People maps like, wow, man, lucked out. And I was like, what? So yeah, sure enough, they had a base in Tampa, Florida. So I told her I'm going to Tampa, and she's like, well, I got this job at Auburndale. I was like, oh, it's good work. We'll stay together. And got married a year later. But yeah, we were here for my 4-year enlistment, and we stayed here 2 more years. But I was in Iraq. Well, you were here for 2 more years. I was in Iraq. It sucked. And then I went to Iraq for 2 years so she could go to nursing school. And then I took a job.
So I could go to nursing school. It was just happened that the economy crashed. There was like nothing here. There was nothing.
Yeah. And then she finishes nursing school, but then I get like the dream job of an opportunity to go work on a special operations task order in Europe for U.S. European Command, to be kind of like their unofficial person there running the identity intelligence program over there. And so then we were off to Europe for 3.5 years, and that was great. But it was 2010, right? Like you couldn't sell your house here in South Florida. So we rented it, and we rented it for 7 years. So after Germany, we went to DC, then we went to Chicago, and then we said, we're leaving Chicago. We're doing this renting full time. We're going to go back to our house in Florida. Got our tenant out. We moved right back into our old house and went, what the hell do these people do to our place? Spent $40-some thousand fixing it back up. Oh, we lived there for a few years. It was great.
But if we hadn't moved back right then, anyway, because there was a hurricane, there was a whole thing.
They had a hole in our freaking roof, and nobody said anything about it.
No,
for like 3 weeks, it's just raining water into our freaking roof.
But if we hadn't moved back right then, it was kind of a God thing that we wanted to move back right then, because if we hadn't, we would have not been able to claim our insurance anyway.
What a mess.
All right, we got some comments here. So we got D5 Pasadena says, indeed, the final Don't Mess with Texas sub battle was one of the best moments in the series. I cannot wait for the Book 7 audiobook.
That's soon, by the way, too.
Yeah, it is coming out. I think
it's like next week, I think.
26th, I think.
I think so. I think it's 26 next week. Yeah, coming up soon.
This series is an oasis in a vast desert. Thank you. Well, that's awesome. Thank you. Appreciate that comment.
I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, Cicero says, I missed the beginning. When are you going to Taiwan? Okay, so we're going to be heading out very soon. It's getting really close. September 5th through the 19th.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
2 weeks. And we had, we ran all of our expenses for the last several years through the business card. So we get to go first class.
Yes, first class, round trip. So Tampa to San Francisco, 5.5 hours. That's a long flight. But, my God. That flight from San Francisco to Taipei, holy cow, I think it's 14 hours, 14.5 hours. That's a long.
I think it's longer than that.
I know. It's a long freaking flight. Thank the Lord we are flying first class, which means you got to actually lay down and you can go to sleep for 8 hours and then work for 6 hours. And you're still on the plane. That's insane.
I flew the real first class. First time on our way back from Venice. I'd never been in a seat that lays flat before. Yeah. That's like a game changer.
It ruins you for flying. It ruins you for flying. You can never fly coach again after that experience. So you're like, oh, I can't do this. I got a sample of what the good life was, and I want it again.
I mean, when I was like 19, I used to go in like Southwest and like volunteer for the middle seat because I was like, I'm young, I can handle it. Now I'm like, no, let's let someone else deal with that.
I've had 3. Yeah, I've had 3 hip replacements. My hips are all jacked up. I can't deal with that crap anymore. For long flights. So, for any of you guys who have a business or think of having a business or whatever, I'm telling you, the best advice I got from my one of my bosses I worked for in DC. He says, James, whatever you do, you get a credit card, an airline credit card, or a credit card points that you can use, and you run everything through your business credit card, and you rack up points, and then you get family vacations and all this other stuff, and it doesn't cost you anything because it's all run through the business. So we spend 6 figures a year on advertising, and we run it all through that credit card. And yeah, it's racked up a ton of frequent flyer miles. And I'm telling you, hands down, best business advice you'll get, run it through a credit card that gives you miles or something like that, because then you can use the miles for your whole family to go on a vacation. Other people come visit you, upgrade tickets. You and the wife can go on a fancy business or first class trip somewhere. Yeah, that's the way to do it, because the fact is you gotta spend this stuff. You gotta hire an editor, you gotta hire a book cover, you're gonna do all that stuff regardless. Why would you not run it on a card that's gonna give you a bonus for it?
Yeah.
Things like that.
D5
Simple
Pasadena says, excited to see what happens with Dan's girlfriend and his child in book 7.
Oh yes, you will. That's gonna be quite interesting. Yes. And for those of you who do like the Texas, there are a couple of really cool ending scenes that are going to happen with our favorite ship captain. So I think you're going to appreciate it like that too. And yeah, so
and also it says first class. What? Enjoy. Thank you.
Yeah, and you're right about like Dan Ma's girlfriend, right? I mean, that was part of me is like, damn it, why did I kill this guy off? I
He was such an interesting character.
Or maybe had him like last into the second book or something, man. But you can't take that stuff back. So
I have some mid-journey art I created of Dan Ma, by the way, that I need to share because it's really cool.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. So we send in Carson and Nat, go in and they infiltrate on the shore to inform the what's her name, Dan's girlfriend and whatnot, who has their baby. They go in and they were supposed to be there for not that long and be able to then send the signal, get them to come down and be able to bring them into the safe house and hold them when the actual operation kicks off and they capture the port and then they fall behind enemy lines. And that's how they're kind of recovered, right? Kind of a clever way of doing this. But then something happens. Life, missions, they all kind of got changed around a little bit. And since their intel little mission like this wasn't like the reason for why they're doing, Operation Crimson Tide, they kind of got stuck. And now they're kind of like stuck, waiting for this mission to kick off, that they have no idea what's going to happen. All they know is now, instead of being there for like a week or a few days to a week or 2 weeks, like they thought they were going to be there, they're going on like month 2 or starting month 3 going, WTF, man, we just took ourselves out of the war by going to do this thing, got trapped here now. And the longer they're there, the more likelihood they could possibly get, discovered, because they don't have as built a background and backstory as the other MI6, gal does. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic, and that crap does happen, man. Like, you have an op that's supposed to happen, and we had some stuff in, Eurasia is supposed to happen, let's go like this, and then it was all good to go, and then just got put on hold. I'm like, WTF, man. I'm like, we're going next week with the training, with all the gear, and then next thing you know, they're like, hey, we got to pause this thing, and then it's like 14 months later, I'm like, is this going to happen or what? So it does happen in real life too, but yeah.
So Cicero says, my favorite characters were the Russians. We will be sure to let Alex Aronson know, because that was really his heavy contribution in MD4 and 5. And we got those
and that was
awesome characters.
Yeah, and most of you guys know, or maybe you're aware, we've been mentoring some military veterans on how to write as a business. That's very different than having them just co-write with you and kind of work with you as like a writer, where to just submit works and you publish and try to make a business out of it. Our goal is to do an actual mentorship where we teach them the craft of writing and how to create compelling stories that readers want to buy and read and reread, but also teach them like the business side of writing. The business side of writing is hands down way harder than writing a book, way harder. And so this was a big part of that, was having Alex work with us, working in and writing inside of those 2 books. He wrote both of those books with the Russian stuff like that. And that was a really good for him to see that process of how you actually do all of that, weave it together, make it work, how you be part of all of that and see that. And then learning, of course, the business side of how that stuff works. So when he was ready to then move into the lead role then, and moving forward with his series, as you guys have seen now with the Soviet Endgame, that jumped out of the gate very successful. Right out the gate, it's a really good book and good series. It has a good plot, it has a good theme, has a good trajectory, how it's going to play out and roll through the 5 books. And he would not have had that, known how to do that, or been able to do that without like having someone who's figured this out teach them. And that was our goal. That's always been my goal, is to teach these guys how to fish, and then teach them how to go from a fishing rod to a freaking trawler, so they can support their families and make it a business, a long-term business for themselves. And so it's neat to see him start to take off and thrive and do that. Will we continue doing that beyond the couple of guys we brought on with this? I don't know. It turned into a whole lot more work on our end than we necessarily thought or anticipated. But we'll see. It's been a mission, a passion for me to try and help my fellow vets get into this, because I got into writing PTSD therapy. I think it's the way to help address the suicide problem in our community and what's been happening, because it's still therapy for me. But it's a lot of work. It's very hard. And it's kind of like one-on-one. It's not a lot of, you can't do it for 10 or 20 people at a time. It's got to be more focused, which means it's a lot more energy and effort on our end. And it's energy and effort I can't put into creating more books faster and content, keeping things going. You know what I mean?
Okay. So I got a couple comments here. D5 Pasadena says, do you guys do the art that you post on Instagram? It is amazing. Well, I thank you. I'm kind of mostly responsible for the Instagram posts, not all entirely, but
it depends which art.
Depends on what it is. So there's we don't actually personally create art unless it's photography. I do a lot of photography. So if you see photography on there, that's very likely a picture that I took. And if you see a quote like with a picture, it's very likely that I took the picture and then put it on top of, put the quote on top of one of the pictures. A lot of the art is either cover art that we had created by like Tom Edwards, which is our cover designer for the sci-fi, or from Momir, who does our
it depends how it's used. Okay.
However, we do also use some Midjourney art just for posts on Instagram, just to kind of like, what Midjourney is? It's like
it's an AI generative
art.
Yeah. But there's ways we use it though. Okay. So
we're just using it for like posts to kind of get some like,
we're very limited in how we use like Midjourney type stuff. If it's something that we're going to
just for interactions,
that we're paying to promote,
right,
or that we're offering, like if you've seen in the sci-fi series, I spent way too much money creating sci-fi artwork, like ships and all the different types of ships. Next, we're diving into the actual soldiers and then making images and different battles and things like that. When we do that kind of stuff, that's all done by actual artists and groups. So Nick Ryan, you guys have read a lot of his military books. Well, him and his wife actually have a really good book cover company where they do a lot of art. So all the sci-fi art, except outside of the covers, is actually done from Nick Ryan and his wife. And then Tom Edwards, he's created the cover arts, and then he's created that orbital halo scene you see on book 1, the big Zodark fight scene in the forest.
And we've used some of that on some of the merch. I don't know if you guys saw that we have a merch site now on Fourth Wall. It's in the description if you guys are interested. But you guys can get merch with some of this art on. Actually, this is really cool. This mug came in. I was like, this actually looks so rad in person. It actually really looks cool.
Yeah, good panoramic.
That's Tom Edwards did this really cool art. Yeah.
We're looking at trying to figure out what kind of art and that we have that we can then create into other types of other ways to have it to offer to you guys, whether it is large scale posters or some of the like Display is another site where you can actually like artists and people can upload their own artwork and images, and then they can determine what kind of pictures they want to be turned into and created. Like some of them are those steel image, those steel they're steel like boxy shaped type pictures. Others are like they have things where it's like these panels like this, and you can have that turned into like a big image. Like we could take the Halo scene, right, and we can have that broken up into those 5 blocks or 6 blocks like that, and you can buy that and then hang that in your wherever and have this massive epic sci-fi scene on your wall. That's really cool. So we're looking at some of those types of things. They're not cheap though. That's the thing. Like we could do it, but honestly, I don't like. Maybe one person a year might buy something like that. Maybe I don't know, but God, it's cool as hell. But they're not cheap. They're gonna be like those things are like $300 to $500.
It's not a charity though. You know what I mean? Like we love doing the art, but we also want to not have it take out of our bills. Okay, so
okay.
D5 Pasadena.
See, I told you about that. I talked about that. You're like, oh, I don't think we should do that angle. I was like, oh, I think that'd be good.
No, you're talking about something else. You're skipping.
Citrus.
Okay. D5 Pasadena says, have you ever toyed with bridging stories that tie any of your book series together? We have, definitely.
Yes.
We definitely workshopped a series that was kind of like an in-between of Monroe Doctrine and Rise of the Republic series, and we actually had outlines.
We had R.C. Bray for the narrator side, and then
like
6 months later they pulled the deal, and I was like, oh.
I don't know if you guys are aware that R.C. Bray had throat surgery and stuff, so we had a whole deal. We were gonna have him narrate, and it when that fell apart, we decided to change directions.
We went with the Taiwan series instead, and then we will circle back to that one at another time.
I think there's a time constraint here with the Taiwan series. We really want to get this thing going.
I don't want to write the Taiwan series. If I wait 3-4 years to write the Taiwan series, a good chance it may have been invaded by that time. I hope to God it's not, but that's the likelihood. So I want to get the series written before. Like Battlefield Ukraine and the Red Storm series, we wrote that back in 2017, and unfortunately, it became it happened. I knew it was eventually going to happen, just didn't know necessarily when, but it did. So I know the Taiwan thing's going to happen, so I want to get that written and out there and done beforehand. But and you're right though about the love triangle.
I'm going to read
I actually had thought about that.
She shot it down. No, I didn't. I just didn't want it to be a huge focus. So Cicero says, just a suggestion for your new series, having a character that is an American fall in love with a Taiwanese or vice versa would be a good perspective character. And I don't disagree with that. I just didn't want it to be like this huge thing where we're not romance writers. You know what I mean? Like we do have sometimes little romance angles in our books and things. It definitely happens. But I just didn't want it to be like a big, huge focus of the story.
That's not to say we won't do that. I have to figure out how do we do it in a good, appropriate way where it actually helps the story,
right,
and propels it, moves it forward, and it's not like an add-on side thing, because nobody likes that. They just don't, and I don't like it as a reader when I read it and go, that was so unnecessary. All that really comes out to me, that reads as word count filler. And I don't like doing that myself. I think there's plenty of room for cool content. You don't need to do that. But if we can find a way to actually make it work, I mean, I've been kicking that around. I legitimately think there is a way to make that work. But we're going to wait until we go to Taiwan to learn a little more about the culture and the people and see how that could actually work. So that's going to really help play out over there. And then one more thing on tying the series together. Had I thought about this more, okay, I could have written the Monroe Doctrine series to be that AI war. that we talk about in the sci-fi series.
Right.
But at the time, I didn't think about tying the two together, bridging it together when I was crafting them both, because I wrote the sci-fi series, and then when those 3 started dropping, that's when I was finalizing and writing the first 2 Monroe Doctrines, and I just didn't think about how I could tie them together like that. If I could go back in time, I would have found a way to make that work. That said, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, I'm saying that I am potentially leaving the option of it to happen. There is a way to kind of have the Monroe Doctrine end where it can lead to a continuation series that would pick up the storyline in a number of years in the future, where that becomes that AI war we talk about in the sci-fi series that formed the Republic, that formed the Greater European Union and the Asian Alliance. So there is a possibility of doing that. I'm going to leave a little bit of a pathway for that to occur when I end this. Again, it just depends if we had how the production cycles work, if and when we would circle back to actually do that bridge tie together. I do want to do it at some point.
All right, Cicero says, I pray that Taiwan doesn't get invaded, but I agree that it is a strong possibility.
Yes, I then really, really hope it doesn't. Again, they're pursuing the porcupine strategy. We'll see. The big problem we have with this whole thing is time. Time is not on our side. This is the problem. This strategy will work brilliantly in like 5 years, but I don't think we have 5 years, because the way to delay or even not have this invasion happen is by making them so militarily tough right now that they say, oh, all right, well, because of XYZ, we're going to need to have this much more to make it work. Well, to do that is going to take 5 years or 10 years, and that's how you buy time. And while they're in the process of doing that, we kind of plus them up a little bit more, so we end up extending that a little bit. And that's just how the game works. But given the current situation we're in, we don't have that time right now. And because of how things have played out in Ukraine, we really don't have the time, because there was a lot of strategic decisions that didn't get made in just faux pas that are continuing to happen, that are, one, hurting the ability to support Ukraine, but absolutely crippling the ability to make the porcupine strategy actually work and work in a timely manner to actually deter something. If you look at like Russia, okay, again, precursors, okay, before the Russians invaded, they had already moved their economy to a wartime production footing. Because they've been in, so sanctioned and heavily stuff like that, they'd already developed all these means to circumvent and move things around. It wasn't as big a deal. And their military production is so much greater than ours, the capacity is. We have the ability to become like the arsenal of democracy, but you have to turn that on. You have to turn the switch. And for it to happen, we don't have factories that can just immediately produce 500,000 artillery shells every single month. Mm-hmm. Can we do that? Absolutely. We can bury the Russians and the Chinese production-wise in just about anything if you turn the machine on and you start the process of conversion. The conversion part takes it's minimum of between 12 and 24 months to really do it. And the longer you delay in making that switch, the less chance you have of working.
All right, so we've been on for almost an hour. I see a comment from Sister. I'm just gonna read, and then there's one final question that I think we're gonna take, and then we're just gonna call it for the day because we have to get back to writing.
Yeah, it's 10 o'clock, and I'm gonna be writing for like 3-4 more hours.
So if Star Trek can integrate the eugenics war with World War III, I believe you can integrate Monroe Doctrine and the Rise of the Republic. Just give it time.
Yes, no, you're right. It's a matter of when will I get that series done, because I can. Here's the lineup, okay? Right now we have finishing MD, then we're going to roll through and finish the last 2 books on sci-fi and get that series capped off, okay? Then it's rolling right into there's going to be 4 books, I believe, for the Taiwan series, Crisis in Taiwan series. call in a series. And so we're going to have that. Rolling out of that, and there's a possibility it could be 5 books. We'll kind of see how it shakes out. But rolling after, well, either while that's going or shortly after there, we're launching a spin-off series for the sci-fi. Okay, one of the vets I've been mentoring and working with for coming up on 4 years now. Poor guy has been trying to retire from the Army, and they keep denying his retirement, and they keep sending him overseas to do stuff. Well, he's a military historian, so like his job in the Army is to document the history of all these different conflicts and stuff. So he's super smart, knows all this kind of stuff. He's probably he's a history geek like me, and one of the few people I've met who knows as much or more about military history and conflicts and obscure crap like I do. So he's perfect. So talking with Matt Jackson, we're bringing the 101st Airborne to space, to into the sci-fi series. That's why you saw in the last couple of books us introduce the 101st. We had a 506, and then we switched over to the 327th. The 327th is going to be it. That was Matt Jackson's brigade he was a part of, and we're going to be drilling down to his specific battalion he commanded in Desert Storm. Well, we're going to use that as the one in the sci-fi. So that's spin-off series. So I'm writing that in like books 9 and 10 of the sci-fi. So you're going to see more of it. But the spin-off is going to start at the beginning of the war when they first go to space to their first conflict. We're going to see all those characters as young privates and buck sergeants moving through the ranks as the conflict and the war evolves. And you're going to get to see how these soldiers were made and do that. That's going to be an epic series.
Let's get to the final question. It says, D5 Pasadena says, what Russian decisions in the full-scale invasion of Ukraine have surprised you? How do you see this conflict ending?
Oh, man, that's a very big political question, okay? If you follow me if you're friends with me on Facebook, I posted a really good article from a magazine called 1945 about how this war is probably going to end. It's probably the first time I've seen an article that's actually factually honest about it. So the biggest blunder I saw from the Russian perspective, okay, again, I'm not pro-Russian or anything like that. I think there was obvious ways to prevent this war. We kind of effed that up in the beginning, and that's what happened. You can't change the past, okay? So the biggest F up on their part was not doing how we have done wars, okay? When we invaded Iraq in 91, we attacked them in 91, and then when we went in at 03, we blasted the freaking crap out of them. Like we took down the entire power grid on day one. We hammered the hell out of the communications grid. We just obliterated the infrastructure of the country in like a few days. And we just hammered them and just kept hammering them as our units invaded with everything we could. Like we threw the whole kitchen sink at these guys. The Russians, personally, I think that Putin and them made a very big strategic blunder by going in light. They went in with the perspective and belief that, hey, they're like our little brothers. We just have to put down a few rogue units and this will kind of like fall apart and it'll work. And that was a huge, huge blunder on their end. And that was a result of good intelligence on our end, really bad intelligence on their end, disproportionate amount of corruption inside the Russian military because the generals, and obviously they did not properly fund their units. The guys didn't have proper kits, all kinds of crap. And where Putin is thinking, I got this cool military that's been upgraded for the last 6 years like he's been spending and doing. But then he finds out that his generals screwed him and there was a lot of corruption stuff. That's why you see a lot of generals have turned up dead because that didn't work out so well. And if you look at the kit and what they're deploying with the new guys right now versus what they had when they invaded, it's a substantial difference. And a lot of people are not going to actually say that. They're not going to admit that stuff publicly, but that's what the truth is on the ground. So their biggest blunder was going in light. They didn't decapitate the government on the first hours like we would have. They didn't knock out the electrical grid. They didn't just flatten everything right off the bat and roll in like we would have done. That was the big blunder. And because of that, they allowed the Ukrainians a chance to organize and fight back. Like when you looked at the Hostel Airport, the seizure there, that was a brilliant attempt to do that, but they didn't do it. They didn't hit it in force and do it right. And as a consequence, they lost a lot of the BDB, and they just didn't work out well. They have effed that whole thing up. Their best decision they made was what's the general's name? Armageddon. I can't remember the guy's name. General Armageddon. When he actually pulled them out of Kherson and did the withdrawal out of Kherson, that was a huge victory, like political victory and whatnot for the Ukrainians. But militarily, that was a brilliant strategy on the Russians' part, because they took enough time to extract all of the equipment, the units, and the people and everything out that they needed. And then blew the bridge on the way out. And so the Ukrainians, first off, they lost a ton of troops, probably like, between 9,000 and 15,000 troops and equipment on essentially like a 6-week operation. That was really bad exchange rate. But that hurt. So they got that. But now they were responsible for supporting and sustaining and recovery of a very large piece of territory without any of the ability to actually do it, to do it right. So it's been a kind of a drain on the military and the economy. Whereas I think personally, if you let the Russians have it, it's their drain. It's their problem to supply and keep going, And then the big blunder on the Ukrainian side was just taking a 6-month break during the winter. I mean, my God, dude, you allowed these guys to spend 6 months building a defense in death and do all that. I mean, that was a big blunder there. But
so how do you see this conflict ending?
This conflict's going to end the same way I said it was going to end, before it started and a few days after this thing started. It's going to end in a diplomatic solution where no side's going to get what they want, and they're going to have to accept the reality on the ground. Can Ukraine win? Sure, if you want to actually commit to winning. But when you're just willing to
elongate the problem,
the strategy, as we have said, if you listen to Senator Schumer and Lindsey Graham and a bunch of the other guys, the strategy isn't actually to win. The strategy is to bleed the Russians dry. Well, that's different than winning. Okay, and we haven't been really intellectually honest with ourselves, with the people, with the Ukrainians and our allies and everyone else about this. But that's been the strategy, to bleed them dry, because they think that this is going to help get rid of Putin. The problem is it's playing into the very propaganda Putin has been using from day one of saying that NATO and the Americans want to replace us, they want to own us, they want to do all these things like that. Well, that's always been a lie. But it suddenly isn't a lie anymore when our people are saying the quiet part out loud, with this whole war. It's like, sure, that's behind the scenes. You don't just come out and admit it. But, cat's out of the bag, so that's where it's at. So it's gonna be a forced settlement. Nobody's gonna be happy. And then they're just gonna have to eat some humble pie and take the L. It does not mean it's a permanent loss. It does not mean it's a permanent end. But if you want to win, you need to readjust the strategy. And to readjust the strategy, these guys need freaking time. And you're not going to get time fighting right now.
All right. Well, this guy is a total introvert, but he could talk to his readers all day long. But I'm not going to let him, because his mouth hurts and he needs to get back to writing like I do. So I'm going to call it for the night. But if you're online, would love it if you could like, and if you are interested in seeing future videos, make sure you hit the subscribe and hit all notifications so you can see if we are going live again, and that will help you see future videos from us.
And if you have any more questions, post them in Facebook, whatever. We will probably definitely try to do another one of these sometime next week. We just figure out when, but we'll do another one next week, at least one more next week. So
awesome. And Oregon Green says, thanks, Guy. Love your books. Appreciate all your work. Thank you. We really appreciate you. We hope you have a great evening.
Yep.
All right, everyone. Have a great night.
All right. We'll talk to you guys later. All right. Bye.